Okay, in part 2 we're going to review the requirements, or what's called the responsibility section of the comp plan, which is what you have to achieve in a given month in order to move up in ranking. Okay, so here's the basic model again. We're going to be discussing this section right here, which is the responsibilities or requirements section. So if you remember this model we used previously, which is a representation of a downline team, starting with you. So if you're just getting started and it's just you, then you sell $1,000 yourself and you move up in ranking from essential to certified. As you can see, that's the only requirement. Okay, so let's review then. Moving up then from certified to lead. Moving up from certified to lead. You can see the requirements are $500 in PRSV yourself. Okay, so again, we're looking at these requirements for lead. $1,000 in group, so that's everybody, right? That you have on your team. GWV, $1,000. And you have to have one active front line. So one of these on your front line, people you've personally recruited and added to your team, the ones, one of your ones has to have $150 in PRSV, personal retail sales volume, and you will have met the requirements to be promoted to lead consultant. Now to go from lead to star, and from star to superstar, you can see this doesn't change. That stays at 500 here. Okay, this moves from 1,000 to 2,500, 2,500 to 6,000. Okay, so this requirement increases to 2,500 and then 6,000. And the number of active front lines goes from 1 to 2 to 3. Okay, so you have to have more of these in order to move up in rankings according to those requirements. Alright, so you can see this team wholesale volume, or this idea of TWV, doesn't even come into play until you reach this level here, which is director. And the only way it comes into play is if you happen to have another director on your team. So somebody who has promoted, so let's say this one here has promoted to director, then the TWV portion comes into play then, and you would not include their group volume in your TWV calculation. It still counts towards this. Okay, their volume, wholesale volume, still counts towards your GWV here. But in terms of this $2,000 requirement in TWV, that has to come from other people on your team who are not part of another director's team within your team. Okay, so it can't come from here. That 2,000 has got to come from elsewhere, and that's what that requirement is. All right, and then to go from director to star director, again, this stays the same, the 500 in your own sales. Then this number goes to 30,000, TWV to 6,000. There's this added requirement over here now of 2 directors that have to be promoted on your team. So not only do you have to have a team wholesale volume outside of the directors on your team, you have to have 2 people like this here. You have to have 2 directors. Actually, those have to be frontline directors, so those have to come from here. 2 frontline directors. Notice it says active frontline. So 2 active frontline directors have to be on your team. You had to have promoted 2 frontline directors. To move from star director to superstar director, that has to be 4. So you got to have 4 of these people had to have grown their teams to achieving director status. Your overall GWV has to be now 80,000. So this whole group now has to be 80,000. Your team volume, so it's your volume not including the volume, that wholesale volume coming from those people who have made director on your team, has to be 10,000. Okay, so you can see the requirements ratchet up as you move up, particularly as you move up from director to star director to superstar director. But as your team expands and grows, you'll see its natural maturation process, that this is actually what happens kind of automatically on its own. Alright, so part 3, we're going to now apply the actual reward percentages to this model.